On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 3 o'clock, Ukraine's President Zelensky says it's crucial that Europe is as united now as it was when Russia's war began in 2022. In a joint press conference with the European Commission chief Ursula von der Leyen, he said it would help real peace to be reached. President Zelensky also emphasized the importance of European backing for Ukraine.
It's very important that you are with us and that we speak to America and we speak together. And it's important that Washington is with us. And today, in several forums, we are deciding what we are going to discuss in Washington.
Diplomatic talks are already underway with the call of the so-called Coalition of the Willing. The group's aim is to bring countries together to police any peace deal in Ukraine. It's being co-chaired by Sir Keir Starmer. Huge protests are taking place across Israel to demand the release of the remaining hostages. Demonstrators say they're concerned a new offensive in Gaza could endanger the lives of those still being held captive. The Israeli military says it will allow aid agencies to bring tents into Gaza to provide shelter for those who will be relocated away from combat zones. Sam Kiley is World Affairs editor at The Independent.
They are being moved on yet again by force, at a time when there are even reports, and I've got none of my own reporting behind this, but the Reuters news agency is reporting that Israeli and South Sudanese officials are now trying to go into discussions to find a location to move Palestinians out to.
Well, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says they have no choice but to finish the job of defeating Hamas, and his government has also rejected allegations of ethnic cleansing. A body's been pulled from the River Swale in North Yorkshire in the search for a 12-year-old boy who went missing yesterday. Specialist search teams as well as fire and rescue officers were deployed to help. Response efforts in northwestern Pakistan have intensified after severe flash flooding. Officials say there have been more than 200 deaths in one district alone. And the British Horse Racing Authority staging its first strike in modern history over proposed tax rises on betting. 4 scheduled fixtures next month won't be going ahead. LBC weather, low cloud in the east, gradually clearing during the afternoon. Plenty of sunshine elsewhere, strong winds across the far southwest and a high of 27 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Simon Morgan.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Vanessa Feltz.
Lovely listener, here we are again. It's not 24 hours since last I addressed you. The time 3 minutes past 3. The day is Sunday. I'm Vanessa Feltz. Delighted once again to have your company and looking forward to picking your brains on this one. I trust your Sunday is progressing placidly and in delightful fashion, but do please allow me to intrude upon your serenity with a quotation from our former Prime Minister, one Boris Johnson. What, you may be wondering, does Boris think of the meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin in Alaska? Well, our former PM does not mince his words, writes Boris. Well, that was just about the most vomit-inducing episode in all the tawdry history of international diplomacy. What is making Boris nauseous? Well, he says it made his gorge rise to see Putin welcomed onto American soil, and adds it was emetic, a synonym for makes you want to puke, to see him applauded on the red carpet. He continues, it was nauseating to watch his Gollum-like smirk as he became one of the only world leaders I can think of to be invited to ride in the presidential limo. It was positively chunderous to him, given an American platform for his lies about the causes of the war in Ukraine, a country that in 2014, when he first attacked it, posed no threat whatsoever to Russia. Adds Boris, as I listened to the unctuous and wearisome predictability with which he tried both to flatter and discreetly humiliate Donald Trump, I wanted to gag. I bet you did too, says Boris, and most of us are not even Ukrainian. Breaking news today, lovely listener, is that our Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer will travel to Washington tomorrow alongside other European leaders to take part in talks alongside President Trump and President Zelensky of Ukraine. So this is what I'm asking. Do you agree with Boris Johnson that the whole cavalcade is essentially a circus designed to cozy up to despotic tyrant Vladimir Putin in an utterly sickening symphony of sycophancy? I wrote that, not Boris, that was my alliteration. I'll say it again because I enjoyed it so much. An utterly sickening symphony of sycophancy. You might well agree, but let's not overlook Boris's conclusion, because this is the important bit, that the fawning and the ego fanning are necessary. Boris says, like so many of the most objectionable pieces of historic diplomacy, that meeting was justifiable and even essential. Puke-making though it was, Trump was right to try. He was right to meet Putin, because if millions of Ukrainians were watching with horror at the red carpet rehabilitation of the Russian tyrant, they were also watching with hope. Says Boris, they were hoping that maybe, just maybe, this fabled New York dealmaker could produce a solution that would end the war, but still salvage what they want and need, namely the freedom, sovereignty and independence of their country. And I'm asking you, lovely and discerning LBC listener, whether you're on board with Boris on this one. Did the treatment of Putin turn your stomach? But do you agree it's essential to appease and flatter him nonetheless? Do you hold out hope for tomorrow's meeting? Do you feel more confident of constructive progress with Sir Keir Starmer on board? Or do you feel, as veteran journalist John Sweeney said just 24 hours ago on my show yesterday, that there is no chance whatsoever of Putin retreating from Ukraine or countenancing either a ceasefire or peace? Boris Johnson ends his incendiary column. What about Britain? What about Europe? America has gone ahead and put secondary sanctions on countries that have continued to buy Russian oil and gas. When are we going to have the courage to do the same? And I wonder whether you think stopping that is where you think peace lies. What is your take on this? 0345 60 973. The story moves on. Keir Starmer is going to be included and involved in this meeting with Zelensky, probably on his way to Washington right now. So things have changed somewhat since yesterday when he seemed marginalised and utterly irrelevant to the entire process. But do you have faith in this? Do you think that the pantomime of cozying up to Putin was essential, nauseating, stomach-churning, revolting, but essential? Or do you feel very differently about it? 0345 60 973. Let loose. Tell me what you really feel, what you really think. Let's discuss this with Simon Marks, LBC's Washington correspondent, and certainly my favourite Washington correspondent. Simon, hello. It's all kicking off all over the flipping place.
It certainly is, Vanessa. I mean, we are on the eve now of an unprecedented potential showdown between European leaders, Volodymyr Zelensky and his European allies, and the American president, after Europe was completely stung yesterday when Donald Trump essentially, after the collapse of that summit in Alaska on Friday, decided that he was going to abandon his quest for a ceasefire in Ukraine and instead adhere himself firmly to Vladimir Putin's calls for Ukraine to cede control over the entire Donbass region in the east in order to advance the cause of peace. So European leaders now racing to join Volodymyr Zelensky here on Monday, partly, I think, to protect him from another made-for-TV mugging by Donald Trump, and if he's in the room, Vice President J.D. Vance. But also, this is essentially a race now to save the transatlantic alliance that has kept the peace in Europe for the last 80 years. Now, White House officials here are suggesting that this is going to be a day-long series of meetings tomorrow. They say there will be breakout sessions, and they are almost couching this as though it is the negotiation. It is the discussion at which land swaps will be agreed. Remember, land swaps that Volodymyr Zelensky has completely ruled out. But this sense of uncertainty going into the meeting is absolutely overwhelming, given that we only knew within the last 2 or 3 hours that the Prime Minister would be joining French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, Ursula von der Leyen and other top European officials in this rush to Washington to try and shore things up for Zelensky.
I mean, one of the things we know is that Putin is trumpeting Friday's meeting as a great success for Russia and a PR coup and an absolute triumph, and all that footage of him on the red carpet in the presidential limo and generally being fawned all over and lick-spittled has been incredibly beneficial to him. He's thoroughly enjoyed using it, making much of it, hasn't he? So Donald Trump must be smarting, because we know that he has this very thin skin, a very delicate ego, and that he also responds favourably to being fawned over and a bit of sycophancy. So he's going to be feeling, obviously licking his wounds. And also, I think we felt on the international stage that he was going to kind of saunter in and come out with something. There was going to be something on the table. Instead of nothing, the lunch was abandoned. The meeting ended hours early. The whole thing was egg all over Trump's face, really. So what do you think he must be feeling now? And what on earth is he going to bring to the meeting tomorrow?
He's desperately trying to turn it around. I mean, the wound licking with Donald Trump never lasts very long. Yesterday morning, European leaders may have been hoping that he would spend the weekend in quiet reflection over why it was a huge mistake to invite Vladimir Putin to set foot on American soil for the first time in a decade, much less applaud him as he stepped off his aeroplane, roll that red carpet out, give him a trip in the beast, and even, Vanessa, allow him to speak first at a joint press appearance that was being held on American soil, utterly unprecedented in the annals of the modern American presidency. But any wound licking didn't last longer than the round of golf that he had yesterday with US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. By the time that was over, the White House was indicating that they were backing Putin's territorial claims on Ukraine. They've interestingly this morning backed away a little bit from that. Steve Witkoff was asked on television here within the last hour if he could confirm that Donald Trump was absolutely now backing Putin's demand for the whole of eastern Ukraine, and Witkoff just wouldn't go there today. That's what tomorrow's meetings are all about, he said. So there is a sense that they understand that they have deeply irritated, not just Zelensky, of course, but enraged European leaders with whom only last Wednesday Donald Trump struck an agreement, a 5-point plan for the for the summit with Vladimir Putin, that he then completely binned the second he was in Putin's embrace.
Simon Marks, thank you very much indeed. Let me go straight to Stuart Crawford, former Army officer and defence analyst. Stuart, good to have you on the programme. Boris says nauseating but essential. I wonder what you think is going to happen next, though.
Well, I mean, you had to be chuckling when you read out Boris Johnson's diatribe. Heavy on the alliteration and hyperbole in typical Boris Johnson style.
But many different words for vomit, puke and chunder and nauseating, all sorts of things.
I suppose being an Oxford chap, he's got to show off his education. Whereas we Cambridge people, of course, tend to be more modest.
We're much more understated, certainly, much more subtle, you're quite right. Tell me, though, whether you think he's right. Was it utterly stomach-churning and yet necessary? Because Simon Marks just described it as a great big mistake.
Well, I don't think it was a mistake, actually. I think it was necessary, if only to start the process of some sort of negotiations towards peace in Ukraine. Far better than war, as I always say.